In this tutorial, we are going to do the normal and ambient occlusion baking for the door. I'm going to use the same workflow and let you work along. For the models after this, you were expected to do the same with all the other props and models that we're having. So again, I start by splitting up the model, split to parts. And for the door, I want to keep the wood separate from all the rest, because in case we're opening the door, then I don't want any ambient occlusion or any normal map errors on the top of the model or on the sides of the wood planks. So I'm going to merge all the wood so that the door is one object. Then I'm also going to merge the whole arch. So I now have two models, and then I'm going to merge the door handle, this part, and the rest I'll be keeping separate. The reason I'm keeping this separate is I have only sculpted one bolt, and I want to copy this one over to the model, and I don't want the ambient occlusion to be just in one spot when I copy it around, so I'm going to paint that in manually later. The door handle will stay in place, so I don't really care about the backside or the intersecting faces, so I'm keeping these together. And also the metal beam in the middle will be duplicated in the end, so I'm going to do some manual ambient occlusion for this. So when I have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 models, I'm going to export them as high poly meshes. Just like this, I've created from 5 of our subtools 5 high poly exports, and now we go into Maya and we're going to do the same to our low poly again. Okay, here in Maya, I'm going into my mesh tab. I'm going to separate the model, and I'll do the same groups as I've done in ZBrush. So I'm taking the arch, I'm taking the planks, combine these. I'll keep the metal beam separate from the wooden bolt, and I'm going to combine this part. Now we still need to apply the smoothing of the edges, so I'm going to take my whole model. I'm going to soften the edges, and I'm going into the UV editor and start hardening the UV island borders, just like this, like we did also in the last tutorial. You can actually go into the model and double click the outside here, click harden, and do this for all of the pieces. And once we have this done, we can start exporting our model. Okay, when I was checking the hard and soft edges on the model, I saw that this part and this part were sharing the same UVs, and because I sculpted two different stones for this, I have laid out the UVs so that they don't stack on top of each other. So if you find an error like that, you can fix that by just shifting the UVs around, because that won't affect our high poly model, but will affect the bakes from the high poly model. So if you only want to have one stone and duplicate it, delete one, or if you want to have two different ones, you can reshuffle the UVs and make space for the second one. Okay, once this is done, we're going to export. Now we still have to make the cages, and as we've done this before, we're going to duplicate all of our pieces and give them the name cage, except we will not need a cage for the bolt because it's very small and we might not even take the normal map for this one, so we might just paint it. So I'm going to delete this one, but for the rest I'm going to select all the vertices again, go into the normal mode and the move object so that I can scale it up in the n direction. like this. And this I'm going to do for all of our pieces. Okay, I'm now going to export these and then I will put it back together in XNormal. To save some time in this part, I'm going to bake down the door in 2 parts. For this, I'm just going to remove the arch piece and I'm going to bake the whole wooden door at once. The reason I'm doing this is if I copy this one later into the other space, I can just imitate the ambient occlusion the door makes at that position, and the door handle is never going to move. So if this casts ambient occlusion onto the door, is actually a good thing, so I don't have to do that later. So I'm going to bake this part, and then I'm going to bake this part separately. Because if I want the door to open, then the faces on the inside are not getting any artifacts. Okay, I've already set this up. I have my high definition meshes, which is the door metal, the door handle, and the door wood. And I have my low definition meshes the same. And I already applied the cage meshes by right clicking and browse external cage file. But I've done this already. In my baking options, I made sure that I have the right file path. I kept the 2K resolution for my normal map and the edge padding to 4, anti-aliasing to 4, and I can start baking. And there's already our normal map. Let's see how this looks in Marmoset. And as you can see, this baked out pretty well. I've already set up the scene. There are no visible seams except for on the door handle, which you can see here. This is due to the very small UV island this part has. There are 2 solutions for this. We can of course scale this up, but because it's so small in the scene and you won't notice it if you zoom out, so we're going to keep it like this. And as you can see, there's no artifact on the outside of the door, which is important when we're going to open it. And the only thing that baked down, of course, is from the metal beam. But since we're keeping this one in place and we're going to duplicate another one later to here, you don't see it, and this is perfectly fine for what we are going to do. Don't forget to also render out the ambient occlusion, but I'm going to do this later. I'm now going to get the arch in here, so we have the normal map completed. Going to my folder, look for the high poly door arch. Of course, put it into the high definition meshes. And for the low poly meshes, I'm going to take low poly door arch, right click, browse external cage file, and I'm looking for the cage of the arch. Calling this door arch bakes. And take the normal map on 2K resolution and bake this one out. Okay, there we have our normal map. And let's see how this one is going to look. So I'm applying I'll create a new material just very quickly. I'll take a normal map, which is door arch bakes, and I'm going to apply it to our arch. And as you can see, also this one with the settings and setup we've done in Maya with the cage and the smoothing groups gives us pretty good bakes that we can use to paint on. Now I decided against baking the bolt because I think it's just too small to be baked, and I think any normal map on that one will just be seen as noise by the viewer. Of course you can do that. What I will do now is I'm going to take all the meshes together and bake the ambient occlusion map to save time. But you can do this separately if you would like to, of course. And after this I'm going to see you in Photoshop and we're going to put the textures together. Okay, for the ambient occlusion map, I baked it out all at once, so I don't really have to do anything for this one. Going to save this out, give it a proper naming, like we did with the pillar. So I'm calling this one door underscore AO bake. Baked. Then the normals, I have two normal maps. Again, I need to cut these out and merge them together. And once we have that done, we can save this as our normal map. Door normal. And now that I've shown you on two models how to bake out the normal and ambient occlusion map, I would expect you to do this for the remaining assets, which are some of the props and the wooden pieces that hold the tileable textures together and anything that you have created on your own. And in the next tutorial, I'm going to show you how we're going to bake out the tileable textures.